Hey everyone, my name is Rebecca. I love taking tests, and today I'm going to attempt the Mensa Norway test. Alright, so this is the Mensa Norway IQ test, which is somewhat accurate. It's not completely accurate, and it's been told that it's not a substitute for professional intelligence tests. The score is between 85 and 145, where the population average is 100. The test must be solved within a 25-minute time limit, and you do not get penalized for answering incorrectly, and you do not get bonus points for finishing early. So I'll just put in my age and then we'll start. So here is an indication of how the test works. So for example, in this case, there's the same figure that repeats itself. So the correct answer would be B. Now, I will start the test. With this test, as soon as you select the answer, it moves on to the next question. So I will try and be rather quick. I will not be giving all the correct answers because this is me attempting to take this in a genuine way to see my score. So if you would like to see the correct answers, click on a different video, or I might make another video giving the whole explanation to the test. Okay, so once I click start, I will start the test, and I will briefly explain. For the more difficult puzzles, I will try and keep it brief as to not waste the time. So in this case, we have 9 grids, 9 boxes, and what you see is the first square always moves one to the right. So in this case, it should be here, which means the correct answer, in my opinion, is A. In this case, we have these figures, and what I believe the correct answer is, what the correct answer to be is, I believe, E, because we see the outside shape stays the same, and the inside shape is a sequence of circle, cross, and this sideways square. In this case, we see that the outside shape stays the same, and the inside changes. It doesn't stay in order, but there's only 3 options: nothing, circle, and cross. In this case, nothing is missing, so F. In this case, we see what happens is this little rectangle moves to the left. So in this case, or I would say to the start, it goes backwards. So in this case, the answer should be also F. In this case, here it starts to get a little bit tricky. What we see is there's a line with an arrow, and what happens is it moves clockwise. So in this case, if it were to move clockwise from here, it will go there, which means the answer is D. In this case, we see that there's always one block being added, and the sequence is not all that important because there aren't 2 options with 6, which means the only possible option is E. In this case, here it starts to get tricky, so the explanation might take a little bit longer. What we see is that there's always being 1 square being added, which should already rule out everything except for E. But let's just be a little bit more clear. We see that the rotation happens. There's a rotation that happens, so a square gets added, and then you rotate it counterclockwise. As you can see, clockwise. I'm sorry, clockwise. You rotate it clockwise. So this one is actually one that I find really, really tricky. I have taken this test before, as to obviously make sure I didn't spend all my time trying to figure out the puzzles. So I already know more or less which puzzles I find trickier, but I have not looked up any solutions. So in this case, I think the important thing is that the middle row stays the same, which means it rules out the B. And I'm gonna try and figure this out for the sum. I'm noticing that the sum of the outside squares is always 12. 4 plus 4 plus 4 is 12. 5 plus 5 plus 5 is 12, which means here it should be 3, which means I would need to select C. Now this one is pretty easy, I would say. The point stays the same place, and then the square moves clockwise. So point stays there, and the square moves to here, so it's D. This one is rather easy, it's just the arrow moves counterclockwise, so it goes to be a D. This one is one of the most common exercises that I find on these tests, which is basically just a sum. The outside shapes form the inside one, which means this plus this equals this, which means in this case it's the horizontal circle. Now this one is also relatively easy. There's black squares and gray squares. Now you can see it moves clockwise, so the answer is either C or A. But there is a recurring theme, which is that there's only one gray triangle square per line, which means that this answer is most likely A. Now here, similar as before, there's three shapes that alternate, no specific order, black, white, and gray, which means that here there's a black shape missing, and there's a triangle missing, which means it should be a black triangle, which is this. This one, there's obviously three different shapes, circle, square, and triangle, so we're already going to know this one is a circle. Now the line can be diagonal, horizontal, or vertical. Here we have vertical and diagonal, which means we're missing a circle with a horizontal line, which gives A. In this exercise, we're seeing that the arrow rotates, and it can be upwards, sideways, or downwards. What happens is it rotates clockwise, and there's either 1, 2, or 3 little circles. In this case, we're missing 3 circles, and it should rotate clockwise, which means the correct answer is F. This is another one similar to the gray shapes. The figure rotates clockwise, and we are missing an empty one, which means that the answer is B. Here, this is also relatively easy. It's literally just a clock, and it rotates clockwise, but what's particular about this, it's not regular, it's exponential, which means that first it starts like this, then it increases by this much, then it doubles, which means that if this is the first, then it moves like this, and then it should move double this much, which is a quarter of an hour, which means the correct answer is D. This one, I am not completely sure about, but what I believe happens is, it's almost, I would say it's a sum, but I am not 100% sure about this. So what I have noticed, let me take a look at this. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's always 4 lines. The amount of lines is the same, which means it's either F or C. Now, for purely logical reasons, I'm going to assume that it's the opposite, because this plus this equals this, and this plus this should equal this, I would say. Another way I would also solve this is you take the amount of lines, you sum them. I'm not sure. I'm gonna pick this purely because it's exact opposite than this. Okay, so this one, again, this one is pretty much my strong suit. We have 3 different internal shapes. Well, yes, 3 different internal shapes and 3 different external shapes, which is the internal shape missing over here is the diagonal square, and the outside shape is the points, which means we're missing this. Okay, so this one is actually a very cool problem that I love these kind of problems. What happens here, I think, is you sum these two, and the lines that overlap you remove. So in this case, we add this line and this line, but we remove this line. So in this case, we have these two lines, and this line, but we do not have the middle line, which means that the result is this. This is just another sum. This plus this equals this plus this equals this, so this plus this equals this. Okay, so here we're starting to get to the harder problems. What I notice here is the square moves to the right every time, which means that the upper square should be either A, C, E, or F. The lower square stays the same, so it's either A, D, or E, but E, yeah, either A, D, or E. What happens to the ball is the upper ball stays the same, and if there's a square, it disappears, which means that there should be a ball in the middle, which means that the only correct answer possible is the E. This one is another problem which has to do with shapes changing color. The circle is always black, which means C is not an answer. There's one with two triangles and two with all the shapes, which means that that's not relevant in this case. So we are missing one with a white square. And the circle moves in the 3 positions. So the circle should be in the middle and there should be a white square. As you can see, the circle moves. And there should be a white square, which means this is the flat one. Now this is similar as the exercise that I showed earlier. You have the different things and you have to sum them. So in this case, you get rid of this line, but you add this and this, which gives this. In this case, you get rid of this line, you get rid of this line, and you get rid of this line, which means you have this, this, and this, and this, which means the correct answer is F. Okay, now, this one I personally find pretty hard to solve. I believe the way to solve this is the points that appear in both you keep. So here is the 2 diagonal ones, here is the upper left one. In this case, there shouldn't be any points. As for the circles, I believe I actually have absolutely no idea how. Actually, I do. You rotate and sum, which means you rotate it like this, and you add a point and you rotate it, right? I believe. No. So this is the sum of the other two being rotated, which means that this should be, depending on what order you rotate it in, what direction you rotate it in, it's either F or E. Now, this is useless because it could be rotated either way. Believe it's if you rotate it counterclockwise, which means if you rotate this counterclockwise, and if you rotate that, so the answer should be this, which means that the sum is this one right over here, which means that it's F. Now here, same principle, the points are the ones that overlap, which means in this case it's no points. which means that the answer must be F because everything else has a point. Unless, hold on, it could be A, because that is not exactly a point. So what happens is it rotates, and then you, you rotate it, hold up, you sum it, right? That plus that is that, so that plus that. Okay, yeah, it's F. Now here, this one is easy again. You have 3 angles that you can have, medium, large, or small. And in this case, we're just missing the large one, and the rotation happens clockwise, so it should be A. Now here, it's another one where you just overlap and remove the ones that touch, that actually do overlap. So in this case, we get these lines are added and this one is removed, therefore that. In this case, we do not have the right half of the image, and we have this line, this line, this line, and this line, which means it's A. Okay, now this is one of my least favorite exercises because I cannot answer this. So what happens here is I'm actually genuinely not sure about this one. It might have something to do with number conversion because of the way it works. I am genuinely not sure. I do know that the amount always seems to increase. So I'm gonna have to say that it's probably B because it seems to increase every time. Or B all black, but 3 whites don't seem to equal 2 blacks. So I'm gonna say B. Okay, so this one, point plus point equals square. Point plus nothing equals point. Nothing plus square equals square, which means you got point plus point, which is a square. Nothing plus square equals a square, which means we've got the 2 upper ones, and then square plus square is nowhere to be seen, but we can assume that point plus nothing is a point, which means we've got the 2 upper ones and a point over here, which means that the answer has to be E. This one is just a sum with overlaps being removed. So in this case, we just have this point, and this point, which is D. In this case, we have the I actually do not know how to solve this. I'm gonna guess on this one. Because I do not know the actual answer, so I do notice that I'm just gonna guess, and I'm gonna say I'm gonna say I don't know, I'm gonna say I want to say D or C because point plus point seems to always equal something. So I'm gonna say C. Okay, this one again, I have absolutely no clue. I want to say that it's either A, B, E, or F. Because there's no just whites and there's no double lines. Each one also seems to have one that has doubles on one side. There's no same ones that repeat themselves. One always stays the same. So it's either A, B, or E. Wait, no, hold on. It's either B. Wait, no, it is B. Because one has to stay the same. And B is the only one that keeps that, so it's B. Oh god. Okay, this one. I think I solved this once. Can't remember. So nothing plus point seems to equal nothing. Not sure. There's always one with 2 and one with 1. So that's, oh yeah, it's 1. There's always one touch. No, never mind. There's always 2 white ones on top, which means there's no white on top, I would say. I'm trying to think, but I can't really think right now. I'm gonna say I also have to hurry because I don't want to like leave it. There's always one that only has 2. So I'm gonna go with A. Okay, and this one is I believe it has to do with a sum. I'm not completely sure in what way though. So I want to say that it's a vertical. Oh yeah, it's a vertical one. You just sum each one is an increase. Like these all together, they give the final letter. It's vertical. It's a vertical increase. So in this case, it's missing the side ones. In my case, it's missing the sides. So I believe. Huh. Should have the sides, that's for sure. Three, 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm gonna say that it's actually I'm gonna say B. That was my take. Probably answered a few wrong, but that is my result. Yeah, that's it. So this was the Mensa Norway test. The Mensa Denmark test is slightly more complicated, and I might attempt that as well. So that was it.